Hello everyone, in this episode we'll go through a Wiselending report. This time we'll focus on medium risk findings. Again, please first read the vulnerability yourself, try to understand it, and only then watch it. This way you will get way better results than just mindlessly watching the video. So now let's start. Exiting a farm on mainnet assumes peg 1-to-1 when swapping stETH for ETH. Normal situation, you should never expect any of two tokens to have direct peg, because of course some tokens like ETH and wrapped ETH, for the most part, are considered being pegged to each other, because one wrapped Ether is always returned to one normal Ether. But we saw it in case of, for example, USDC. Everyone thought that USDC is always $1. And then last year there was a problem with USDC Bank that held many of its assets. And then USDC dropped by 10%. So it was worth 19 cents only. The same with stETH. stETH should be worth 1 ETH, but first of all, there is a possible risk of hack that would make stETH totally worthless. And second of all, if you look at the stETH pricing, even though it's 1-to-1 normally with Ether, the price of stETH to ETH may change. It may not exactly be 1-to-1. So in these two cases, you should not consider both of them as being the same. And actually, I had a specific tag just for that, but I because of lack of time, I didn't push through and verify this medium issue, and I didn't want to write report of something that I'm not 100% sure of. So yeah, so in this case, I can show you the exact place. So you can see the token out. If this is blockchain ID is 1, that means this is Ethereum, because Ethereum always has chain ID number 1. This is stETH. So it's special case that because Wiselending is deployed on many different chains, and stETH is only on Ethereum, because this is wrapped a version that accrues interest in case that you are staking your Ether. Yeah, so here you can see the token out. You can see ETH amount and ETH amount. So in this particular case, the ETH amount here, if this is chain ID 1, it takes WETH address, so that it assumes that stETH and WETH are the same, because in the other case, it takes entry asset. And so that means that treats stETH and WETH the same. And of course, it shouldn't, because those are different tokens. And I would like to refer to one additional thing. In tools use, everyone is writing manual analysis. And here, this is super cool that Stalin gave us some additional context that helped him to find this. In this case, it was finding of asymmetry finance in Solidit. So yeah, another tip to you, use Solidit. Maybe I will do some next video about how to use Solidit to get the most out of it, because just reading random reports is just practicing some random skill. It won't really give you much. Maybe in the beginning, when you don't know anything, maybe it might help this way, but otherwise I think it's just a waste of time to randomly pick things that may or may not help you. Next up, Chainlink Oracles may return stale prices or may be unusable when aggregator roundId is less than 50. So a bit of context. Wiselending calibrates oracles to get a heartbeat, which it uses for checking for staleness of prices returned from oracle. To calibrate, It takes between 3 and 50 historical prices and picks just the second largest. For the most part, this is good idea, but I don't know if you know, but there is one catch concerning rounds in Chainlink. Round ID is not a single number. Round ID additionally has epoch ID. So let's say that we have our aggregator version first, and it has its epoch number 1, and with each price update, the round is updated by 1. But the most significant bits are set to the epoch ID. So this is always 1. But then, let's say that version 2 of Chainlink Oracle is out. Then the epoch ID is increased to 2. And then because it's a composite, the number will be way higher than it was. Okay, so the best option will be to go through the documentation of Chainlink and see what it has to say. So you can see it here, round ID in proxy, and it says, because a proxy has references to current and all previous underlying aggregators, it needs a way to fetch data from correct aggregator. The round ID is computed in the proxy contract as shown in the following example. So first, this is phase, and it's, as I said, being updated when new version of the aggregator is being on the off-chain, and it's shifted left. So the round ID is an aggregate of phase and original ID. So let's say that we have number 1000, a bunch of zeros, and then number 50. So it's 10 zeros and 50. Next round is 10051, and then the address of the aggregator is being updated. The new version goes out, and the next round is not 100052, but it's 2 because it's version 2, 200052. So the number is bigger by like phase plus phase, like shifted by phase offset. So it's really huge change, and Wiselending just doesn't account for that. Next up, we have first depositor issue, inflation attack. So this was really tricky, and normally it's like Wiselending has protection against inflating shares. So before each transaction, they check what was the shares to asset ratio, and after the transaction, they check if the change in shares to asset ratio is not bigger than expected. If it is, it will just revert. So normal inflation attacks just won't work. And now there's some additional function, exchange rewards for compounding with incentive, that just doesn't have this specific check. So this is kind of similar to the Euler issue from like around a year ago, where all the functions were checking if your health factor didn't drop below 1 with all the actions, but there was one particular function, donate to reserves, that didn't have this check, which allowed the attacker to take a huge loan, donate to reserves, and liquidate themselves and get the liquidation incentive. Of course, the attack was a bit more complicated than that. I recently covered that in one of the previous issues. It will be referenced somewhere up there for you. Please check it out if you are interested. But this is very similar case. And what can be done in this particular case to find such an issue? So if there is some invariant that can't be broken, in this case, shares to asset ratio cannot be inflated by big amount. And in this case, it was not that it was explicit. You have to find yourself, what are the invariants? What are the things that would totally break the protocol if they were true? And one of such cases, in case of uncollateralized debt position protocols is that shares to asset ratio cannot be freely manipulated. So if you can find a path that allows you to skip the checks that the protocol has against them, then you probably can do something bad. In this particular case, you could just work around the protections about for shares inflation that the protocol had by one of the functions, exchange rewards for compounding with incentive, that is not even directly connected to the CDP part of the protocol. And actually the same was with Euler. It was not directly connected to the lending and borrowing of the Euler, but still it increased the amount of assets that the protocol had. Moving on. Next up, we have withdrawing uncollateralized deposits is possible even though the position is in liquidation mode. And a bit of introduction here. In Wiselending, you have bare collateral and weighted collateral. So each collateral has a ratio at which you can borrow it. So for example, if you have like $1,000 of USDC, its bare value is $1,000. But let's say that the protocol thinks that the safe ratio, in case that maybe something really goes bad and there is like mass liquidations, the safe is, let's say that you can borrow for only 70% of what you put. So in this case, if the collateral ratio is 70% for USDC, for each $1,000 you can borrow only $700. So this is treated as your collateral that you can use for borrows. This is to protect the protocol from bad debt. In this case, the problem was then that if the PowerFarm check was true, it checked for bare value, and if the PowerFarm check is false, it will use the weighted value. And the problem was here, when user requests a withdrawal of uncollateralized deposit, and let's say they have 1.5 ETH of bare collateral, they have 1.2 Ether of weighted collateral. So that means that they are below their borrow, so they should be liquidated. But because this value was checked, even if they were under water, so they had more borrows than what they have their weighted collateral, even though because the protocol wrongly checked for this value, they still could withdraw the money and put themselves even more into liquidation. And because the liquidator had some additional benefits from liquidating, that means that the user could even do it themselves. They could withdraw their funds and liquidate themselves for some additional money. So what can you do here? And this is the tip that I heard from Chris Apostolov. He is always trying to keep the protocol invariance in his head, and then whenever he sees function, he verifies if the invariants that should be kept in the protocol are held here. So many, especially junior security researchers, read the code line by line. However, better option is to really focus on the functionalities and read code functionality by functionality. Of course, still you have to read the code word by word, but don't focus on the very lines. But for example, in this function get state, just focus on the functionalities. So one of the functionalities is to first get the collateral that user has. So, and out of these 3 lines, the functionality is just reading the user collateral. And here next functionality is to return the slightly weighted collateral and checking if it's smaller than borrow amount. So really what this functionality is to check if the user account is healthy or not, if the user collateral is bigger than the borrows or not. And reading functionality by functionality allows you to think about the code not as a code, but as a set of functionalities that modify the state. Because remember, smart contracts, you can think about them as about a state machine. So you have some state and you have functions. And functions are there to modify the state. On the very, very like high level, this is it. So you have state, you have functions to modify the state, and you have to find places where this state is not being updated in a way that the protocol thinks it is. Next, the protocol allows borrowing small positions that can create bad debt. And this is what I mentioned before, that we actually use this particular case in our solo high finding. So to cut long story short, if you have CDP protocol, there is this concept of bad debt. If there is some debt that no one wants to buy, like this is being bad debt. And if the bad debt is too big, like finally it will go down because people will get out of the protocol, because it has liabilities. The protocol in general has liabilities that it cannot repay. That's why when you have liquidations, there is this safe zone. So for example, if you put $1,000 of collateral, you, for example, can only pay back $700, so like 70% of what you put, to have this 30% of safe net that when something goes really bad, for example, the token was hacked and its value is dropping rapidly to zero, or some unexpected black swan event, you want to have this margin for error to liquidate all the users before the bad debt is accrued, because then it means like that this is the end for the protocol if they cannot repay the debt that they have. One important concept connected to it is you should make sure that the positions are not dust positions, that each position, if it was to be liquidated, has enough incentive for the liquidator to take it. So for example, if you have position that has one way and like minimal, or let's say one way, or so one with 9 zeros of ether, so it's still very, very little amount, but it's significantly bigger than one way. So if you have this value, still the gas price for like single computation, for like single add opcode, maybe like if the gas price is really big, may cost you like hundreds of gwei for one operation, and liquidations like take hundreds, thousands of opcodes. So if the users are really able to create such dust positions, like no one will really liquidate them, because the cost of executing the liquidation will be higher than the value that the liquidator can get out of it. So that's why most protocols are protecting against having dust positions. And like how to find those things, yeah, just general knowledge about the type of the protocol. In case of CDP, a collateralized deposition protocol, you have to make sure that the position can be liquidated. So this is like the big thing that you have to have in mind. So the protocol always needs to give proper incentives to all of the actors. So if there is no incentive for liquidation, no one will liquidate it, and you will be lost with the bad debt. Next up, off by one, bug prevents the compare min max from detecting Chainlink aggregators. circuit breaking events. This is very interesting case, which by the way happened in the past. For example, in Venus protocol, Chainlink Oracles have this safety mechanism. So no matter what price is passed to Chainlink from these off-chain agents, each price has min amount and max amount. So for example, because it happened before, so when the Luna crashed, Chainlink didn't assume that it really may go down below 10 cents, and it did. And the problem was that the answer that Chainlink returned was 10 cents. So the people took advantage of it. Like, I mean, the arbitrage bots. And in Venus, they said that Luna is the Luna stablecoin. Sorry, I can't recall the name. USDT, TUSD. The one of them, I do believe. So they thought that it's impossible. So that people were arbitraging, because still, according to Venus, it was 10 cents and it was like below 1 cent. It was like basically worthless. And so Wiselending knows about that, so they protect against that to check if the answer is over or under the max or min. It reverts. However, they check if the answer is over this value and not over or equal. And the problem is that if the max price is reached, it won't be bigger. So in practice, it will never be active. So that's the crux of this issue. And what would help you to find those kind of issues? Generally, there are some hidden assumptions that developers do around external integrations, which may not turn out to be true. So if you're integrating with some external protocol, always make sure that you read the external code. And particularly Chainlink, they have a bunch of food guns in their code, like 2 of them that we saw in this protocol, but there are more than that. So first of all, read the Chainlink docs and read the contracts, external contracts that the protocol is integrating with, and probably you will find something interesting in there. It happened to me many times, so it probably will happen to you as well. Next, unchecked return value back on TransferHelper, safe transfer from. This is case that I was really mad, because according to the docs, all the findings from previous contest, which was Hats Finance contest, were out of scope. And as you may or may not know, some of the ERC20 tokens, like USDT, for example, USDT was created before ERC20 was finalized, so it doesn't have any return value on transfer. So transfer does not return true or false, it just returns nothing, and if something fails, it reverts. But the protocol doesn't check for that, but it was found before in previous contests of Hats Finance, and they said that this is out of scope. And you can see still many people, even though it was out of scope, submitted it, and they have been validated. So what can I say? What recommendation can I give? Like, of course, there is interesting case. I encourage you to look on that. This is this weird ERC20 tokens, and you have like a lot of edge cases in some of the ERC20 tokens. Definitely check them out. This is the /XO, and the repo is called Weird ERC20. Next, borrowers can DOS liquidation by repaying as little as 1 share. Okay, so in case of Wiselending, if the position does not have bad debt, you can only liquidate like 50% of the debt. So of course, liquidators will want to liquidate everything, like 100%. Like, sorry, the 50%, the maximum that they may have. But the user may front run the liquidator and repay 1 share. And protocol doesn't care if you repaid as little as 1 share. You can do that, and then it will fail. So this is like common case in liquidations. There are many similar problems to that. So if you have liquidation, make sure that the liquidations can be performed no matter what. In this case, if this is 50%, make sure that like front running and depositing like minuscule amount doesn't revert the liquidations. The better option would be, in this case, to make only 50%, but make some specific number, for example, U in 256, to signify the max that you may have, so like 50%. So then, even if someone repays one share before you, then you still signalize that you want to liquidate everything. And in this case, it will work. Next, liquidating chaining can be achieved by liquidating token collateral with the highest collateral factor. So the thing is, again, similar case to the previous issue, you can liquidate up to 50%, but when you have tokens with different collateral factors requirements, then if you go ahead and liquidate the token with the biggest collateral factor, you will liquidate that and the position will still be underwater because of the tokens with smaller collateral factor. And then you can like chain all those liquidations and be able to liquidate more than 50%. So you are definitely breaking one of the core requirements, one of the core invariants of the protocol. Next one is lack of update when modifying pool fees. The problem is that the set pool fee function doesn't invoke sync pool. So that means that the pool fee, when it's applied, then when any other operation is executed and sync pool is called, the pool fee is applied not since the moment that admin set this set pool fee, but for all the period before the sync pool was called. So let's say that fee is 1%, and at this time the protocol accrued some fees, and then 10 minutes later or an hour later the admin comes and sets pool fee to 10%. Then like an hour later someone comes and executes some function like borrowing, repaying, or something, and sync pool is being called. The new fees are being applied not from the last hour but last 2 hours, and in extreme cases it may really have some bigger impact. And again, recommendation how to find those kinds of issues is checking for invariance. And this particular case is that checking that some operations that have to happen each time that anything changes. So in case of CDP, collateralized debt position, this is syncing, be it like borrow index, lending index, be it some fee that accrue over time. Those are really nevralgic operations, and always, no matter what you do, you should sync them. If you are not doing that, then probably you can exploit it. Next, PendlePowerManager is incompatible with Pendle Router v3. So the Wiselending team said that they are meant to be compatible with Pendle Router v3. However, they are not. You can see here the problem stems from the calls made to Pendle Router remove liquidity single SY and add liquidity single SY. And in v3, those signatures changed. This is pattern that happens from time to time, and it's like the protocol is using only interfaces of the protocol, and then when they deploy it, it appears that the protocol works a bit differently. So always, again, the same as with Chainlink, if you are doing some external integrations, make sure that those integrations will really work, and like look at their code if it matches from that what really the protocol thought it is. Next, PendlePowerFarmToken totalLpAssetsToDistribute may lead to temporary dust due to price growth check being skipped during deposit. So it concerns the mechanism that I spoke about briefly before. They are validating how much the share price grew over the transaction. They are checking the time difference and verify if the share is really has proper value. And the problem is that if you call add compound rewards, the rewards are being added, but they really doesn't affect the share price immediately. Okay, but before, one thing to mention here, you can see in modifier sync supply, when we are validating the share price, we are really getting the share price before. So you can see that we are getting the share price before then the function is being executed, and then we are validating the price of the price before. So in the middle we can donate something here and it will work. It will not revert on us, but later, the next time someone calls it, the share price before is being skewed by us. So it will do this function for some time, because then this particular case, share price now will be bigger than maximum, and then it will does it until the enough time is being passed. So it is like soft DOS, because it blocks the funds for just some time, not forever. So what could be done here to find such kind of issues? You can see a clear pattern here. We have actions that happen one after one another. We are triggering next update, syncing supply, update rewards, get share price, and then we are validating. And it's worth always to think, what if I am able to modify the process, to do some unexpected action in the middle, to donate something, to call something again, to change something maybe in external system, if this is using it. For example, the read-only reentrancy that is there in Curve. In general, you can think about the functionalities that it does and what would make specific functionality to not work with accordance to the other parts of the code. So next up is incorrect calculation of lending shares in withdraw or allocate shares. Liquidation can lead to revert and failure to liquidate. Now this is a very edge case. The protocol uses true or false to verify whether to round up or round down the price, whether to use max price or not. And they like diminish by one in such cases. And in this particular case, when there is no enough funds to pay for the liquidator, they pass a wrong max price. In this case, the sponsor disputed that in their case this is okay. However, fortunately, the warden had their proof of concept that showed that really it will revert in like these edge cases when the protocol does not have enough funds. The liquidations could really be messed up. Next, current heartbeat implementation may lead to prolonged DOS of Chainlink Oracles. So there is this Chainlink is dead function, checks if updated is bigger than heartbeat, it will return true. But the problem is, in case of Chainlink, like there are two possibilities. The price may change either after a specific time passes. Let's say that an hour passes and a particular feed has a refresh time set to 1 hour, or specific percentage of the price changes. So for example, 1% of price. So in case of Chainlink, it's either the price moves by specific percentage or specific time passes. So in case of abrupt changes, you may have over like 50 changes because the price may fluctuate like 2% up and down, like depending on the price feed, but still like it may fluctuate a lot in the short period of time, and then the protocol will think that the Chainlink is dead. So what can we do here? Again, this is knowledge of external protocol and reading docs of external protocol. Next, precision loss in the calculation of fee amounts and fee shares inside prepare pool function in the MainHelper contract. And this is like we actually found this issue. We reported it. Unfortunately, we provided really, admit that, really bad explanation of it. In this case, the warden focused on this double division. So we can see here that amount interest is calculated in bear increase divided by precision factor of a year, and then this amount interest again here is multiplied and then divided. So we have first division and then multiplication. So if you see this pattern, division before multiplication, then probably there is precision loss. We additionally found that depending on the token decimals, for example, on USDC, which had 6 decimals of precision, this precision factor here will be too much, and it will also lead to this precision loss. Unfortunately, again, our report was not clear to judges, and then when we wrote POC showing that it was too late, and judge didn't accept it. Like, we accept his judgment. We learned our lessons from it, that you should always strive to write the best report, and by the best I mean the most technically detailed report, because we for the most part just show the code, show the audit tags that we have, but we didn't like really explained the real issue behind deeply, and that was our problem here, and it was not accepted. Lesson learned. Next, a user can lose more value than he specifies in the spread when he enters a PowerFarm. So we found something similar, but I think that we messed something up here and it was not accepted, unfortunately. But in short, they have allowed spread and reverse allowed spread. The problem is that they calculate value after as the received shares, which already has the slippage. So let's say that you say that your max slippage is 5%, and then you apply this 5%, and you check the value ether not from the initial value but from the value with slippage. So let's say that you only wanted to lose at max 5%. So then you are in current calculation, you are first applying this 5% slippage at most. So let's say that in the worst case scenario, user gets $95 for every $100, and then you are checking this value after over this, and it like multiplies this slippage that you may have. So you can see it here that first you are applying the slippage and then you are like applying the slippage again. So instead of losing only 5%, user like loses almost the double of it. And the last issue, users attempt to deposit and withdraw reverts due to calculation style inside calculate shares. So the case here is rather peculiar. So if you have, like, for example, 2 users that deposit, like, let's say 1 ether first person and like any other value, the second person won't be able to withdraw their funds for extended periods of time, and this is due it's checked here, lending shares price after. And this is because the protocol protects themselves against inflation by diminishing the value that is being put to the protocol by 1. And in handle deposit, then you finally calculate shares and it decreases the calculated shares by 1 during deposit to safeguard against inflation attacks. And you can see here, like this is max price is set to false. That means that 1 is being diminished. And that means that share price after is 1 bigger than current share price max. And that makes the protocol revert. So the issue was not that simple to find, because this is really edge case. It only happens when one user deposits and the other deposits right after and wants to withdraw. It's really, really hard to find those cases. Do I have any recommendation for that? Like, this is really hard to tell, because what you can do, and probably I have an idea how the people that found it did it. And I do think that maybe they looked at the tests, maybe at their test coverage, identify places that are not properly tested and focus on them, because many times those particular places that are not well tested, there is some kind of assumption that it will just work. And yes, in the base case, maybe it will work, but maybe there is some edge case, as in this particular case. The edge case was that what if 2 people deposit and the second one wants to withdraw? They will be locked of their funds. So yeah, this is the end of all the issues. Previously went through 5 high severity issues. Now we went through 17 medium issues. I hoped that you learned something new, and see you in the next one.